dear everyone, welcome to yet another edition of Clique Virtual Wine Tasting. Well, today, as you can hear from the conversations that we had, we bring you to the land of Tuscany in Italy, to the beautiful vineyards of Luchi. Well, a little bit about the history. 25 years ago, Frescobaldi, Victoria Frescobaldi in the early 90s met with Robert Mondavi, and this meeting gave life to a new chapter in the history of great Tuscan wines. From that meeting, Luce was born, and it was inspired by a desire to make a dream come true in Montoccino. So I will leave the rest of the story and the storytelling to Peter. But what I want to say here is, well, luckily, Wine Clique, we didn't have to wait for 25 years to meet Peter. So thank goodness for that. Yes, we met with Peter, a very, very charismatic character, just 1 year ago. And that day he brought with us bottles of Luce to taste with us in the office. And what turned out to be just a normal wine tasting, like what he duly said, he brings bottles around to the world to share the wines with everybody in the world, turned out to be a lovely meeting. And that meeting continued to a lovely lunch that we shared in the office with friends and with colleagues. And with this tasting, with this meeting, with this lunch, it blossomed and it will just continue to develop. So without further ado, I'd like to hand the stage over to Peter and to Alessandro. He will share with us the story about Luce. So Peter, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Alice. I was just saying to Alice earlier that in Italian, her name is Alice. So if I sometimes call her Alice, you will understand. I have to say, first of all, I'm not Italian. I'm from Scotland, from Edinburgh. And I now live in Hertford, just north of London. And it never fails to amaze me and impress me how the technology that we have available allows us to meet. Here I am at 9 o'clock in the morning in England, and there you are just after 5 o'clock in the evening in Singapore. And I still am amazed. It's astonishing that we can do this, but it's wonderful, particularly when we've had to suffer during the lockdown of not being able to visit in person. But I very much look forward in the future to coming back to Singapore and seeing everybody virtually, or no, not virtually, really, and in real terms. Today we're going to visit the winery and the wines of Tenuta Luce. And to give a little bit of very brief background, and Alice or Alice has already done a little of that, the Frescobaldi family are the family in Tuscany who created this together with the great Californian Robert Mondavi. But a little bit of background about the Frescobaldis. The Frescobaldis are one of Europe's most important and longest standing aristocratic families of all time. The early origins of the Frescobaldi families go all the way back to the 8th century, and the first records we have of their making wine goes back to 1063. We have a vineyard in just south of Florence called Castiglione, and that vineyard was the first to produce wine for the Frescobaldi family way back in 1063, and it's still in their hands to this day. So that's almost 1,000 years of winemaking history that the Frescobaldis have. They were a hugely important and very powerful family in the city-state of Florence, particularly during the brilliant years of the Italian Renaissance. They were great friends and patrons of people like Michelangelo, Dante, Leonardo da Vinci. They were very powerful. They were politically very strong. They were bankers to begin with and traders. And then they started to put more of their efforts and more of their time into winemaking. And today, and we'll see later in some of the slides I'm going to be showing you, today the company is run by Vittorio's son, who is called Lamberto. So we're in for a bit of a treat. And to begin that treat, we thought we would give you a little bit of a view of what Tenuta Luce estate looks like. And my very good colleague, Alessandro Marini, who is an Italian, he's a genuine bona fide Italian, from the Marche district, I understand, which is in eastern Italy. He is going to give us a little tour of Tenuta Luce with his camera now. So over to you, Alessandro.
Hi everybody. So here I am, Alessandro Marin, the winemaker of Tenuta Luce, and I will show you right now. So right now I'm standing here outside in the courtyard of the Tenuta Luce. So basically, is here the main entrance of our winery, and I'm walking in to show you where the wines born. So here we are, as you can see. So this is the cellar. So we have all beautiful shaped tulip concrete beds, which are raw concrete. Look, I'm gonna show you. You see inside, it's like a raw, so there is no any films inside. And this is the place where all our grapes come to, of course, became wine. So this is the machine we use to of the selection of the berries. So for sorting the berries, this is an automatic machine, and usually we have all these machines. So the receiving line, it's outside here, just in front of me. And so then all the grapes which we picked by hand into the small crates, and we bring them to here, to this place, to the cellar, and they are just going to every single batch. Of course, they are not mixed, so we keep the separation between the varieties of Merlot and Sangiovese. And so basically it's here where we transform the grapes, so the juice, the must, into wine. And basically this happened at the end of August, beginning of September. It depends on the vintage. So with the Sangiovese, which is the latest varieties to be ripened, so we pick it usually in the end of September. So the grapes, once they came here, we are doing some pumping over. And look, I'm gonna show you what is going on right now. So after the fermentation, alcoholic fermentation, the wines are going into the barrel room, which we are going to see later. But right now, look, I'm gonna show you. So there is still wines here. Look, because we just finished the blending of Luce 2020, and the wine are going right now into the barrel room. So that's why this empty. So I'm gonna show you now here. So after the from alcoholic fermentation, the wines are going to the barrel room, which is here, for its second fermentation, which is called Malolatic Fermentation. And so we done it into the barrels, so in a barrique, French barrique. Right now you don't see the full capacity of our barrel room, because of course we are still in the process of filling the barrels. Just this week we started with the blend of the 2020 Luce. But believe me, in a couple of weeks, all here is gonna be full with more than 300 barrels. Which I remember you that we use 80% of new barrique, so new wood, and the rest 20%, 20-25%, depending on the years, each all the barrique, so all the wood. And this is where, so we have the malolatic fermentation, then the luce. Once we did the blending, it's coming back here, the wine, and to stay for 2 years, so 24 months aging into these barrels. Yeah.
That's beautiful, Alessandro. Very well shot.
I don't know. Is okay, the connection?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now I'm moving right now. So here there are some guys that are cleaning, and I'm moving to another special place, which we have here in Luce. Is this place.
Mm-hmm. He's frozen a little.
Okay,
there is no barrels, but look here. So here we have, we are in the library, we call it wine library, because of course we wanted to collect all the wines. So we wanted to collect to present the memory of this estate, and beginning with the first vintage produced. So the first vintage was the 1993. And as you can see on the label, it was signed by the Frescobaldi and Mondavi together. And then we moved from the first one, you know, until over the last one, the 2017. Also, of course, we have the other wines we produce. So this is the last one, 2017, which is, of course, with this unusual, I would say, label, but because we wanted to create something special for the 25th anniversary. So we wanted to celebrate this big event with something big. And that's why we produce something unusual, like this bottle, this labeling, this new label. And then, of course, we have the Brunello here, and the last one is Lux Vitis. So, and this place usually it's used by me, by Lamberto, to for tasting with special guests, which right now they are not so. We are not doing so much this kind of tasting because, of course, you know the situation. But hoping very soon we're going to receive all the people again.
Excellent.
Also, let me show you. I don't know. So here, this is the facility. So for the winemaking and for receiving our guests, but above the structure of the cellar, we have a beautiful garden, which unfortunately I'm not able to show you because I'm here right now. But believe me, it's really beautiful from there.
what is the size of the property?
The site, so we have 249 hectares of land, and 88 hectares are planted on vineyards. So we have vineyards, 88 hectares basically. The rest are forest or are just land which we prepare to plant soon. So for example, last year we planted 3 hectares. This year we're going to have another 3 hectares. So little by little we are also growing up the size of the estates. The estate.
So, Alessandro, could you share with us a little bit about your winemaking styles? Since you're
sure.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, when I'll show you here. So when the grapes arrived in our front of courtyard, they are then we check the weight, and then all the grapes are, as I showed you before, selected So you have the sorting machine, which allow us to, which is the orange one, which allows us to select every single berry. So just the perfect berries are going into the beds. Then this year, so the 2020, we use a little bit of yeast. So because we are, of course, trying to in pursuing our main goal to make something perfect. So we are trying to see if he's using some yeast is better or not. So because as far we didn't use any industrial yeast, we use just the natural yeast which are present on the skin of the grapes. And then so when we fill up the beds, we started of pumping over. So which means with that hose, and we have a pump, we are letting circulating like that from down to top the wines, because like that we are extracting. So we create the wine in a kind of way. It's like, you know, when you are making tea, you know, it's kind of an infusion. So at the beginning you don't have alcohol, but then as the time goes on and the fermentation goes on, so you have more alcohol, and the alcohol is let you extract the tannins, the structure of into the wine. So from the skin of the grapes, and so more as you let the infusion, we'll say, and more you extract. But until one point, so we don't want something over extracted. So that's why during the fermentation, so in September, during the end of the harvest, we are tasting all the beds more times per day to check that we don't go too far, you know, too far that point, because otherwise you're going to produce something which is going to be not elegant. It's going to be kind of rustic, you know. So we wanted to avoid that. And so then when we decided, for example, the batch number 1 is finished, so we wanted to we drain off the wines, and the wine is going directly to the barrel room there for the second fermentation, the malolactic fermentation, while all the skin which we left behind into the vat, the skin are going there in this machine, which is a vertical press, and all these skins are pressed, because of course from these skins we obtain some wine press, which is good, and it's still a wine, more complex and more structure. And so nothing. Then the wine are going to, as I said, to the barrel room, and then after the malolactic fermentation, the wine are all coming back to the vats for the blending session. So, for example, we test all our wines we obtain after the malolactic fermentation, and we decide to blend it. So the blending, basically, we use the same vats. For example, the number 7 here is full of Luce 2020. And then when we finish this part, all the wines are going back to the barrel room for the aging process, for the aging period of the 24 months in barrel.
What is your take on whole bunches?
Sorry?
Do you vinify in whole bunches, or do you vinify?
No, we don't. Yeah, good point. We don't vinify with the whole bunches, but we have this machine to destem. So we split the berries from the stem, and so we vinify just the single berries inside.
Okay.
So this is the machine, which is separate, split the stem from the berries. And of course, all the grapes are handpicked, and there is a man who is going to dump the grapes into this machine. So it's basically done manually. And of course, and then after this machine, we have another table like this, which is before the sorting machine, this optic sorting machine. So this one. So here we go. And of course, all the vats are controlled, I will show you, are controlled by, we can control the temperatures from here. Look, for example, here with this touch screen, I can control for example, the vat number 26, and I see, for example, it's warming at 16 degrees. So, of course, we are doing the things properly, and the technology is helping us a lot. Of course, for the respect of the fruits and for all the procedure.
Okay.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Alessandro. So basically, Alessandro will be staying with us for a couple of minutes. So if you have any more questions, you can just drop it on the chat box. And now from Italy over to the UK, Mr. Peter.
Alessandro, thank you for that. That was very interesting and beautifully done. You had great insight into the winery there by holding the camera very still. We had a great view. Thank you so much for doing. Fascinating.
Great.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, well, I'll put in
I'm really glad. I'm really glad that everything worked out very well.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was fantastic. So now I'm going to give you a little bit more of background information to the estate of Lucci and to how the estate developed. And I think to help me along, Emerson is going to magically bring up a little bit of a presentation, which is fantastic. And here we go. So Tenuta Luce Wine Clique presentation. The very first slide is designed to show you what, or where rather, first of all, Tuscany is. I know all of you are very well acquainted with Italy and Tuscany, but you know, it's always good just to remind ourselves where it is. And within Tuscany, where Montoccino is situated, which is 40 kilometers south of Siena, and has become a heritage site. And interestingly, the Brunello di Montoccino was the very first DOCG in Italy, founded in 1980. So it has quite a history of excellence, which has been also the hallmark of the growth of Italian wines all throughout Italy. But Brunello di Montoccino was the very first one, and that map shows exactly where it was, or where it is, I should say. Now, Emerson, next slide, please. Is Emerson there? Yes, there he is. Good. This is a close-up of the Montoccino District. And Montoccino is an area which has over 200 different wine producers. The little red dots that you see on the map there, these are all the different designated wine producers under the DOCG appellation. And you can see them there. And you can see where Lucci is situated in regard to that. We're very much on the western side of Montalcino's viticultural area. And you will note also there's a very large proportion of Montalcino district up in the north and the west, which is not planted under viticulture at all. And that's not because it isn't suitable. It's actually because the wooded areas of Montalcino are very heavily protected. This area is very much an area of biodiversity. Great care is taken of the soils and of the woodlands. And we're one of the furthest vineyards in the western part of Montalcino that's allowed to exist, because the rest of it is protected and is not allowed to be turned into agricultural or viticultural land. We're lucky because where we are is a beautiful site. More on that later, but just to put it into perspective, the wine producing hectares of Montalcino are actually very small. If you look at that at the bottom of the graph there, Montalcino's DOCG hectares of 2,100 represent only 2% of the viticultural area of Bordeaux. only 7% of Burgundy and 11% of Napa. So this is a very, very defined area. And for a long time, there was plenty of wine to go around because Montalcino was known chiefly to the Italians. But now, of course, Montalcino is known globally and the demand is huge. So it's not a wine that is readily available because it is very much limited by the area and where it's grown, and it is quite a small area. So we're going to be tasting quite special wines today, I think. Thank you, Emerson. Next one. One of the great beauties of Montalcino is its climate. I used to work with Robert Mondavi in the 90s, and Robert Mondavi was an extraordinary mentor. And he always used to say, he said, Peter, he said, there is only 3 things that you need to make great wine. He said, you need good climate, you need great soils, and you need good people. And that's what he always used to say, these 3 things. When it comes to the climate, we are very blessed. We have one of the best climates possible for making great wines, particularly great red wines. We're situated between the mountain areas that rise up behind us and the Tyrrhenian Sea. So we have a good moderated climate, which is moderated by the cool sea breezes that come in off the coast. We have good high temperatures during the day and cool temperatures at night. And that differential is a very important factor when you're wanting to make great wines, because it allows the alcohol and the ripening of the grapes to come on very well. But at the same time, it allows the grapes time to rest and not get baked or cooked, so that you still get that wonderful balance between acidity and fruit and alcohol. Lucci is one of the highest vineyards in Montalcino. Our vineyard is about 430 meters in height. And one of the other great aspects of being able to grow grapes in Montalcino is because of the cool air and the dry climate. We don't suffer from mildew. We really don't suffer many of the fungal complaints that you often get in other damper climates. So it makes it easier for the wine makers and the viticulturalists to ensure that we can actually grow these grapes organically. And our vineyards are all organically certified. There is nothing artificial in terms of pesticides or fertilizers. Everything is done by hand. And we're very much helped in that by the fact that we have this lovely, benevolent, dry, warm climate. So we're very blessed. Thank you, Emerson. The second thing that Robert Mondavi said to me, of course, was the soils. And here we have 2 very different types of soils. We're in this part of Tuscany in a volcanic region, or they're all extinct there now, but it was a volcanic region. And that has thrown up a diversity of different soil types. The major soil, which is on the higher slopes, is galestro, which is a mixture of sandstone and limestone. And this is very rocky. And when you walk in our vineyards, you don't so much as walk over soft soil, but crunch over rock. And that rock is marvelous in terms of giving us the minerality that is so wonderfully expressed through particularly the Sangiovese. The galestro soils are perfect for growing the Sangiovese wine. It makes the Sangiovese dig deep in order to get to the nutrients and the moisture. And on the way down, of course, it picks up, as I say, this wonderful minerality characteristic, which is one of the hallmarks of the great wines of Montalcino. For the lower slopes, there is a clay type of soil. And this, of course, is terrific for the growing of Merlot. It's a similar sort of soil that you will find in parts of Saint-Emilion or parts of Bordeaux. It's this clay soil, which is perfect, as I say, for the Merlot. And the Merlot was one of the first people to start thinking about growing Merlot, of course. In fact, it was the first person, was Vittorio Frescobaldi. who started to grow Merlot. Up until then, nobody had really produced Merlot in this part of Montalcino. And this was paving the way for the future of Lucci. So these are the two soil types that we have. Thank you, Emerson. Now, as Alessandro said earlier, he couldn't unfortunately take you up to where our garden is, but there you can see a photograph of Tenuta Luce. Tenuta Luce is absolutely beautiful. The part where Alessandro was standing was in front of the big portal gateway entrance into the winery. And that has been cut down below the normal ground level, which is actually where the garden is. The winery is in a sense underground. And so when people as visitors arrive to Tenuta Luce, they come in along the road that you can see in the background, and we say, well, here you are now at Tenuta Luce. And they arrive at the little villa houses there, one of which is where Alessandro lives, the other which is our tasting room and our hospitality place. And they look around and they say, well, where's the winery? Because they haven't seen the bit down below. And they say, this is Lucci? It's just two little houses. And then from inside the house, you take a stairway which goes down deep into the winery, and suddenly you're into this wonderful place, all underground. But on what is now the roof of the winery is this magnificent garden. And one of the great features of the Frescobaldi family, and this has been particularly led by Lamberto Frescobaldi, our current president, is to focus on the environment and to care for it. The stewardship of the environment is incredibly important to Frescobaldi. We're very much governed by nature, very much governed in terms of making our wines by the philosophies of biodiversity and organic viticulture. And Lucci is a prime example of that. And as you can see all around is just beautiful countryside, which is full of wildlife. Cinghiali, the wild boar, deer, and even wolves. There are some wolves somewhere in these forests. I've seen a footprint of a wolf. I haven't actually seen a wolf yet. I'm still alive, but I did see a footprint. Thank you, Emerson. Yeah, there we go. So with the background history, I gave you a little bit of history of the great family of the Frescobaldis, a hugely important and powerful aristocratic family of Renaissance Italy and Florence, who were bankers, traders, merchants, politicians, patrons to the greatest artists of Renaissance Italy, and now, of course, very much one of the greatest winemaking families that Italy has. The other gentleman in the picture there, to the right of the picture, of course, is my old boss, also Robert Mondavi. I've had the great privilege of working for both of these gentlemen. And Robert Mondavi was also an Italian. His parents emigrated from the Marche district, which is the same district that Alessandro comes from. So Alessandro's in very good company. And they emigrated to America. And Robert was born in 1908 in Minnesota. And then the family emigrated from there to California, where his father set up a fruit packing business. And from there, it was an easy step to start making wines. And they, Robert rather, when he established his own winery, he was the first person to build a new winery in the Napa Valley following the dreadful years of Prohibition. Robert came, as I said, from a very, very poor peasant family of Italy who struggled in Italy and emigrated in order to improve their lot in life. And it's almost like a fairy story, because had Robert's family remained in Italy, he would never probably have achieved what he subsequently achieved in America. And that was to combine his resources and his knowledge with one of the greatest aristocratic families of Italy and Tuscany, the Frescobaldis. Robert never forgot that. And he often used to speak with me about it and his privilege in terms of being able to work together with the Frescobaldis. It was one of his greatest ambitions always to make a great wine in Italy, and to realize it together with Vittorio Frescobaldi was a tremendous ambition that he realized. He never forgot his Italian background. He was incredibly proud of his Italian background. And you see these two faces there, very Italian faces, two great Italians together, one an American Italian, the other a Tuscan Italian. That's the background to our story, which started in 1995. It actually started sometime before then. The first vintage of Luchi was 1993, and then the second vintage, 1994, was launched together in 1995. The two vintages were launched officially together in 1995. And they were the first winery, or Luchi was the first winery to produce a wine that was distinctively different. Not just a Sangiovese, but a Sangiovese and Merlot blend. Thank you, Emerson. And here's a picture of our current president, Vittorio's son, Marchese Lamberto Frescobaldi. And Lamberto is the president of the whole company of Frescobaldi. But when it comes to Tenuta Luce, Lamberto has a particular love. This is really very much his baby, because right from the very beginning, when the partnership between himself and the Mondavis began, it was Lamberto and Robert Mondavi's son, Tim Mondavi, who were the two joint winemakers of Luchi. So they established the credentials. They founded the wine in the sense that it was their style, their vision, that was followed through from the original vision of Robert and Vittorio. And still to this day, and now of course, Frescobaldi owns Luchi entirely. When the Mondavi company was bought by Constellation, Frescobaldi bought it completely outright. That was in 2004. And although Lamberto is the president of all of our different estates, he has a particular fondness for Luchi, and he follows Luchi very diligently. So Alessandro always has to be very careful, because Alessandro is looking after Lamberto's baby. Okay, Emerson, thank you. Next slide. We seem to be frozen on Lamberto. And now you're back to me.
I think he got it.
Yeah, he's coming out of it. He'll probably be coming back in a minute. I'm sorry, everybody, you have to look at me for the moment. That's a terrifying ordeal for you, but...
I think my connection was lost for a bit.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? It was probably because I was talking too much.
No. Okay, this is the next slide.
Now this is really just to illustrate where we got the label from, because a lot of people ask, where did Lucci's wonderful label come from? Luci, of course, is the Italian word for light or sun. And the story goes all the way back to the 15th century. The Frescobaldis, they donated some of their land to the church, and they built a church called Santo Spirito. And if you go to Florence to this day, the great church of Santo Spirito is still very much there. It's a beautiful church filled with the most extraordinary artworks. In one of the little chapels of this church, there is even a full sculpture of Jesus Christ on the cross, which was made by Michelangelo. I mean, can you believe that? Hanging in the church, this magnificent, magnificent sculpture made out of wood. The whole church was built by one of the greatest Italian architects of all time, Filippo Brunelleschi. Filippo Brunelleschi built the great Duomo of Florence. And you really are stepping into extraordinary history when you come to Florence. And Santo Spirito is very much a part of that. Now, on the altar, and you can see a picture of the altar there. And if you move to the next slide, in fact, Emerson, you'll see a closer picture. If Emerson, yeah, there we go. There you can see the altar. It's made of a myriad of different mosaics of, different mosaics of colored marble. And in the center is a representation of the sun. This was a very common symbol in Renaissance Italy. You see it in a lot of the churches because the sun was a symbol of God. Obviously, I'm the way, the light, and the life. So light, sun, is a symbol. And it was the architect's acknowledgement that although he had created this magnificent church, the greatest creator was the Lord above. So it was a symbol of humility. And it was Margaret Mondavi who first spotted this as a potential idea for a label. She thought, why not have this beautiful connection with the Frescobaldi's family's history and have Lucci, the wonderful name of light, sun, on our label. So that's the story behind the label. Next slide, please. This is a photograph which I think is very important for you to see because it shows our vineyards in amongst the Montoccino surrounding countryside. This is quite a wild part of Tuscany. There's not a great deal of habitation, little villages, hilltop towns, remote farms, full of wildlife. And as I said earlier, the biodiversity is a very important aspect of how we treat our vineyards. The influence of the wildlife, the insects, the birds, the flowers, all of that has a bearing on how the grapes develop as well. The grapes are not isolated in a sealed dome. The grapes are part of that countryside, and all of these elements influence how the grapes develop and the style and the flavor. And biodiversity is becoming more and more recognized as a vital part of making great qualitative and distinctive wines. Thank you, Emerson. Next slide. And here's a slide showing our viticultural properties. The whole property of Tenuta Luce is 249 hectares, but there's only 88 hectares which are vines, and 11 hectares you can see there which are under the Sangiovese for making the Brunello. And right in the middle you can see where the cellar is. That's where our cellar is, which is where Alessandro was, and we're surrounded by these beautiful vineyards interspersed by the woodlands which help the development and the style of the wines. Thank you again, Emerson. And here's a very interesting 3D slide showing that the majority of the viticultural areas are in the areas which are orange marked, because that's on the southwest slopes of the hills, which have the greatest aspect to the sun. As I said earlier, we're one of the highest vineyards, as you can see there. We're quite high up on the mountain there. And that is very important in giving us a cool temperature, a moderation of temperature, and the air and the sea breezes which come in off the Tyrrhenian Sea and channel up through the valleys into the areas where the vineyards are. And even in the heat of the summer, when it's baking hot in the valleys below, when you stand in the vineyards, you can see the leaves rustling because there's always a breeze coming through the vineyards, which is like a natural air conditioning system. It's wonderful. Thank you, Emerson. This is just back to our philosophy, which is about balance, stability, organic, sustainable wine growing techniques. Everything is done by hand. We are very careful of how we grow the vines. Canopy management is one of the, obviously, the techniques we use. There is no heavy machinery used in anything with regards to the cultivation of the grapes. We turn the soil regularly between the vines in order to aerate the vines and allow for good drainage. We fertilize the soil through green manuring. We do not use artificial synthetic fertilizers. You can really, once you start using artificial fertilizers, you start killing off the ability for the soil to regenerate itself. And we grow cover crops in between, flowers, different plants, and then we dig them back into the soil, green manuring, so that the flowers feed the soil with the nutrients that's necessary. Nature has an answer for everything. And if only we allow nature to express itself, it will do so in a much better way than man can ever do. Thank you very much, Emerson. There's another view of the vineyards, and yeah, well, that's actually, it gives you a great vision of the landscape behind, the mountainous terrain and the vineyards in between. Thank you, Emerson. Next one. So once the grapes have been picked, and they're all picked by hand, and there's two great advantages for picking grapes by hand. The first is, of course, there's very little damage, if any, done to the grapes. But the major thing is, if you put a machine automatically to pick grapes, it picks all the grapes at the same time, regardless of whether they're individually ready or not. When you hand pick, you can individually pick the bunches that are ready, leave the ones which are not so ready for the next day or the next day after that. So the only grapes that are picked are those that are absolutely ripe to perfection. Once they've been picked, they're then taken in crates to the winery, where they're then sorted by hand, triage, separating out the grapes from any detritus, leaves, bird droppings, anything that might affect the overall quality of the wine. Only the full, beautiful, ripe grapes go into the press. And there you get a great view too of the garden on top of the winery. Alessandro's already done a very good job of showing you these magnificent vats where we ferment and macerate the skin on the skins, the wine. Fermentation and the maceration takes a total of about 28 days. And then, as he said, once the fermentation and the maceration has finished, before we put it into the barrels for long-term aging, we conduct the blending. Or I want to also underline the fact that, as Alessandro also said, we use natural yeasts for the fermentation because, again, it's a natural process rather than bringing in an artificial shock to the system. The evolution of the wine is better and the quality of the wine is better if you can use natural yeast and allow the yeast naturally to do their own work. I remember once speaking with a previous winemaker who said that sometimes people call me a winemaker. And he said, I'm not a winemaker. I don't make the wine. He said, it's the vineyard that makes the wine. He said, I am like a midwife. I'm in charge of delivering the baby, but I don't make it. The wine is made out in the vineyards. And he wasn't just being humble. He was developing an idea that if you say winemaker, very often people think it's like a chemical experiment and that you're somehow in a laboratory and you're mixing and putting together different elements. The technique in Lucci, and I know Alessandro will say exactly the same, is to let nature speak. So you bring in the wines, or the grapes rather, a very, very gentle press, then with the skins into the vat, allow the yeast to do their work, fermentation, maceration on the skin, and then once the individual wines have been separated, then you do the blend and then aging in the barrel. It's actually very simple in its essence. Of course, there's a lot of work. I'm not underestimating what Alessandro has to do. And there is technology involved, as he showed, in terms of the wonderful temperature-controlled vats. But the process is actually quite simple, as nature would have dictated it. So when we do the blending, which is before we age the Merlot and the Sangiovese, before we age the blended wine, we do the blending. We do the blending prior to bottling rather than at the time of bottling, because Lamberto and Tim Mondavi were firmly of the view that a wine like Lucci needs to have time together in the barrel to fully integrate in order to achieve a harmony, in order to achieve this complete juxtaposition of two different grapes over a period of 24 months in barrel. Not so many winemakers do that. Most winemakers will do the blend after it's aged and then do the blend prior to going into the bottle. But we always do it beforehand so that we get this full integration of the two grapes and the different lots of the vineyard so that we get this harmonious style, which is a hallmark of the Lucci wine. Thank you very much, Emerson.
Peter, yeah. Peter, shall we start tasting the wines? Because looking at all these photos is getting me thirsty.
Right. Well, we're actually, you've come in right at the right time because we've finished now. This is the last slide showing the library. This is the very last one, Alice. This is showing the library where we hold all of our old wine vintages. And if you ever come to visit us in Tuscany, this is where we'll bring you to conduct the tasting. So as Alice rightly says, we're all dying for a drink. And we'll start off with the Lucenti 2017. So you all have your samples, I think. Yes, I have mine here. Lucenti 2017. Now, we had some really good news last night, and that is that the Drinks Business publication in the UK, the editor, Patrick Schmidt, who's an MW, he decided to create a list of his 12 favorite Christmas wines. And right there was Lucenti 2017, which is one of his top tips for this Christmas. So, sometimes people say, oh, this is the second wine of Lucci. I'm not very fond of the word second wine. I prefer the word the introduction to the estate, because Lucenti is a wine in its own right. It is a blend of Sangiovese and Merlot. In this case, it's 75% Merlot, 25% Sangiovese. And it's a wine which has got immediately in the nose, you get wonderful fruits, black currant, you're going to get cherries coming through, red currants as well. There's a multitude of different aromatics coming through, but let's try it on the palate too. Wow, that is a great way to start the morning. Well, for me, as I was saying to Alice and Emerson earlier, at this time I should be enjoying a coffee or maybe some cornflakes because it is still morning here. But wow, I can't complain about this. This is going to set me up for the day. Lucenti is a wine which has got a great accessibility. It is a wine which has got tremendous structure. You can feel the tannins in your mouth. You've also got very good presentation of acidity coming through. One of the chief hallmarks of the Sangiovese grape is its ability to deliver strong acidity, but not so strong that it drowns out the fruit. And then, of course, with the juxtaposition of the Merlot together with the Sangiovese, the Merlot gives you that velvety, luscious softness, the fleshy grapes, the flavors of black currant and cassis. And the Sangiovese is what brings you the red currants, the cherries, sour plums. People often say sour plums. And then on the secondary part of the palate, you'll get tobacco elements coming through. A little bit of vanilla from the wood, although the wood here is not as expressive as perhaps in the Brunello or in the Lucci, because we use mostly older wood in the Lucenti, and it's about 20% new barrel oak, and it's all French Barry, 80% of the older used wood. 12 months in barrel, and this was bottled in June of 2019. it's still very young, as you can see. This will age as well. It's designed to be drunk when you buy it, and it can be enjoyed now. But if you want to keep this for 10 years or more, you're very welcome to do so. "2017 was an extremely good year. You'll see that when we taste the Lucci 2017 as well. The rains came at the right time in spring and later on in the autumn. The sun, beautifully warm and hot during most of the summer period. And so the grapes that were delivered were really perfect, outstanding. Let us now try the 2016.
What was the vintage like, 16 and 17?
Well, it's interesting. Every single year, of course, is different. And technically, the 2017 was probably classified as a better year because the 2016 had more rain, it was more problematical. But our overall viticultural chief is a gentleman called Nicolo de Flita. Now, I once asked Nicolo, what happens when you have a difficult and a bad year? Nicolo is a man of few words, and he looked at me and he said to me, "Peter, there is no such thing as a bad year. There are only bad winemakers." He said, "It is the job and the duty of the people making the wine to deal with the weather they're given and to either produce a little less or to modify and moderate how their viticultural treatment goes. You should always be able to produce a good wine if you're any good at all at your craft." So I was suitably told off. But 2016 was quite a tricky year, but it ended up actually being a very good wine because, as I say, we have tremendous care that goes on in the vineyard. And even though the year was not quite as good as 2017 in terms of climate, it was still a good year. I have to say that when it comes to years of difference in Montoccino, they're not as dramatic as in other parts of the world. There are some parts of the world where sometimes the year is up here, and then the next time of the year, the climate takes it down here. For Montoccino, it's much more undulating, like it's mountains, like that. It is less peaks and troughs, but still they can have very challenging times. The 2016, we did produce a little less in terms of wine, but the end result was also extremely good. If my memory serves me right, 92 points for this particular wine, which for what people would often call a second wine of estate is pretty good going. You'll notice that on the nose and also on the palate, this wine is much more integrated because it is older. The flavors have started to settle more. It's only a year's difference, but you can already see that it's not quite as exuberant as the 2017. It's a little less exuberant, it is more steady, it's becoming more stable. Much more integrated, more soft and smooth. The acidity is more tempered, still very good acidity, very good tannin, but less intense than the 2017. But both wines, very different, lovely, beautiful. Well, I think so anyway. I hope you think so. I hope you think so. By the way, may I just say at this stage, a great congratulations to Wine Clique, the team, who have done a fantastic job in decanting the bottles, pouring them into your little sample bottles, and then having them all delivered to you on the very day of the tasting. The organization of Wine Clique is absolutely fantastic, and it's a real credit to you. You've done a fantastic job, all of you, really, really good.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I thought you were about to say that you're part of the drink business top wine company in Singapore.
Yes. You are. You're very good, and I congratulate you on delivering the wine so well to all of your guests. Thank you for that.
No problems,
So,
no problems.
Of course, when it comes to wine, we enjoy wine with food. Wine is not something which is normally just enjoyed in its own, although it can be. It's normally a wonderful accompaniment to great food. Where would you put this wine? How would you enjoy it? Well, from my perspective, Lucente is a wine which is multifarious. It can be enjoyed with all sorts of foods. If I said something to you like a pizza, you'd say, oh my God, I'm not going to eat this with a pizza. But really good pizza is fantastic, and it can be enjoyed with that. It can equally be enjoyed with a beautiful steak. But for me, my favorite dish with Lucente is a very Tuscan dish called pappardella con cinghiale, which is a pasta-based dish with wild boar meat. The wild boar is in abundance in Tuscany, all over, particularly in Montoccino. And wild boar is a delicious lean meat, which marinated with tomato, onions, garlic, green peppers, and then poured over the pasta, the pappardella. That is a beautiful dish, and you will find that everywhere, in every little restaurant in Tuscany. And enjoy that with Lucente, pappardella con cinghiale. Wonderful. Now, let us go to the Brunello. Now, this is a truly extraordinary wine. Why on earth did Frescobaldi produce a Brunello when the original vision by Robert Mondavi and Vittorio Frescobaldi was to produce a blend? Well, of course, this is the home of the great Brunellos, Montoccino. But originally, as I say, they wanted to make a blend. But after a while, it became very obvious that in the particular vineyard of Madanino, which is one of our vineyards of Lucci, the power and the strength and the quality of the Sangiovese grape was so good that it was just begging to be made into a Brunello. And when the Frescobaldis took over the vineyard entirely in 2004, well, the decision had actually already been made because the first vintage of our Brunello was 2003. Lamberto indulged his ambition to make a Brunello in Lucci. And we have this wonderful single vineyard, Madanino, 11 hectares, where we make a very small amount of this beautiful Brunello. As I say, the first vintage was 2003. So we've only, if we're now serving to you the 2015, you know, if my math's correct, that's 12 years of Lucci Brunello. And in that time, we have three times had 100 points from James Suckling for the 2006, the 2010, and now with this vintage, the 2015. 3 times. Now, I know that sounds terribly conceited to talk about your own wine in such glowing terms, but actually the achievement, and that is due entirely to our vineyards and our winemaking team, to get that in such a short period of time, 3 times, an amazing tribute to the power and the beauty of this vineyard. So, as I say, it's 100% Sangiovese to be made a Brunello, you have to undergo incredibly rigorous inspections and regulations by the Consorzio of Montalcino. You can't just grow a vineyard in Montalcino and call yourself a Brunello. Of course, you have to be registered as a Brunello, and there are 203 vineyards currently registered as Brunello vineyards. That is a very rigorous inspection, and you have to, as I say, have 100% Sangiovese. Nothing else can be in there, nothing. And then you have to undergo a very authorized method of vinification, which includes up to 4 years of aging. And in our case, it's entirely now in the huge, great Slavonian oak barrels, the tonneaus. We used to do a little bit, a mixture of barrique and tonneau, 2 years in barrique and 2 years in tonneau. More and more, we've moved entirely to the tonneau to get back to a more original style of how we make our Brunello. And the Brunello, basically, it needs that time of almost 4 years just to age in order to fully, as I say, integrate and to fully develop its flavors. And we don't use the wood as an agent to moderate or ameliorate the wine. The tonneau is used simply to hold it and let it to age. Gives, of course, an influence the wood. Of course it does. It's porous, and it also has that influence of the wood, but it's not as dynamic as the smaller barriques. The Sangiovese grape is Italy's greatest grape, without a doubt. I mean, I know that the people in Piedmont would really be horrified for me to say that, but, you know, they're close to France, so what do they know? No, I don't mean that. Sangiovese is the great glory of Italy, and it has this wonderful nose. It's got a beautiful texture. It has strength and yet softness. I often say it's like an iron fist in a velvet glove, because it's got terrific power. It's amazing aging potential. The acidity and the tannins that come from Sangiovese, and particularly Sangiovese from Montoccino, extraordinary. The aging potential of this Brunello and most other Brunellos will be at least 20 years, which is one of the longest aging still wines. It really is. The next wine in terms of, or longer aging, would have to be a fortified wine like port. But Sangiovese has a tremendous, and the Brunellos have a tremendous aging potential. Now, on the palate, you're very much getting the red currants, the sour plums, the cherries. The color, as you noted, probably against the Lucenti and certainly against the Luchi, is lighter in color. It's a ruby red rather than a dark black curranty red. The Sangiovese has a lighter color. And it's disarming, because when you drink it like this, as we are drinking, it comes across as quite, not light, that's not the word, but it's a word, it's accessible. And yet the power of the tannin and the acidity allows you to really enjoy this with big red meats. When it comes to enjoying this wine, there is no better dish than a steak Fiorentino. You know, that great Tuscan steak which is delivered on a bone and is almost dripping red as well. It's beautiful, beautiful. When you go to Tuscany, ask them for a steak Fiorentino. That is a fantastic dish. And there's no better wine to have with that than a great Brunello. Steak is a marvelous dish to have with this. Red meats, red meat, it really needs that. And the acidity and the tannins work beautifully with the fatty tissue of meat. It can also go beautifully with strong cheeses like Gorgonzola. It's a wonderful, wonderful wine to go with that. But you can enjoy it on its own as well. I do, but not as often as I would like. Sadly, the Brunellos of Montalcino have become so high in demand that whereas in the past, you could get them quite easily, now people recognize the quality of this small appellation or DOCG, and the demand has just soared. And as you can imagine, the markets all over the world are desperately trying to bring in the great Montalcino Brunellos. Our 2015 Lucci Brunello, we'd sold almost all of the allocations before it was even on the market. And that's not me boasting, it's just the reality of what a great wine is when it comes into demand. There is no wine quite like a Brunello from Montalcino. There is nothing. We have a great example in the northern part of Tuscany, near to Florence. We have another great vineyard, Castello di Nippesano, and we have 100% Sangiovese wine there called Montesodi. It's a cru. It's very unusual in that part of Italy to have 100% Sangiovese, but we do. We have this Montesodi. It's made by the same grape. It's 100% of the same grape. It's a similar but not identical climate, made by the same family. Totally different wine. There's nothing like a Montalcino wine. It's a lovely wine, by the way, Montesodi. I'm not putting that down. It's a beautiful wine. Completely different to this, though. Completely different. I've never tasted any wine that is similar to a Brunello from Montalcino. It's unique, absolutely unique, as it should be, as it should be. I hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah,
I can't see.
Congratulations.
It's, when you do a tasting like this, you have no idea what people are thinking.
Exactly.
I could be talking away here going, this is wonderful, wonderful. You're all going, you know, but I'm hoping you're not. I'm hoping you're not, because it is a beautiful.
We're all still here. I think La Lucenta is actually is a beautiful wine. It like you duly mentioned, the 2016 and the 2017. 16 has developed a little bit more flesh, and yeah, that was a beautiful comparison. And then we move on to the Brunello di Montalcino. It's 100% Sangiovese, but yeah, you could feel the power and the finesse.
Yes.
Yeah. So
that's a very good description, Alice. Thank you for that, because the finesse, you're so right to say that word, because there's a cleanness to it, and yet there's a great length. The balance and the synchronicity of it, everything comes together just so beautifully. The finesse, good word, Alice. You get 10 points.
Thank you. So we have 2 more wines to go, right? We have.
Yes, we've got 2 more wines to go. Sorry, we have to move on. I apologize. I'm probably taking far too long.
No worries, no worries.
I just get passionate about it. I get too excited by it because I love it so much. Now,
the last 2 wines.
This is our anniversary, 25th anniversary bottle, the 2017. Same vintage as the very first wine you tasted. The 2017 Lucci comes with the words of Vittorio Frescobaldi on the bottle, which you saw earlier. And this is a dedication to our 25th birthday. Lucci is the flagship of this estate. This is a wine which is 50-50 in terms of Sangiovese and Merlot. Sometimes a little more Merlot, sometimes it's 55 Merlot, 45% Sangiovese, but mostly it's 50-50. 2 years in oak, new French barrique, 80% new French barrique, 20% used, but very much the emphasis on the new barrique in order to moderate and soften down the harshness of the young exuberant wine in order to give it that smoothness and that velvety complexity. Lucci is simply one of those great wines which is a sister wine to wines like Opus One and Senya. You never forget that Robert Mondavi had 3 joint ventures with people around the world. His first joint venture was with Baron Philippe de Rothschild with Opus One. His second one was with Eduardo Chadwick in Chile, and they made Senya. And his third one was, of course, with Lucci and Vittorio Frescobaldi in Tuscany. And these 3 wines are tremendous examples of both the greatness of the Mondavi family and the greatness of the other individual families with whom he partnered, the Rothschilds, the Chadwicks, and of course, the Frescobaldis. I have to say though, knowing Robert Mondavi and spending some time with him, although he loved all of these wines, he was really particularly proud of the Lucci, because Lucci was a homecoming to him. Lucci was coming back to his roots in Italy. And his relationship with the Frescobaldis was a wonderful relationship, which he never forgot. So here we are with Lucci, this terrific wine from a great year where the rain came at the right time, spring and early autumn. The harvest delivered beautiful fruit. And for me, the greatness of Lucci is its harmony. If you ask me for one word to describe the greatness of Lucci, it's the harmony. Not only do you have two different varietals to bring in, but you have different blocks in the vineyard to integrate together. You have these elements to bring together. And when you talk about wine, there are four key elements you need to integrate: alcohol, fruit, tannin, and acidity. These are the four elements that a great winemaker has to harmonize. And to do that correctly is a very, very difficult task. You have to get the proportions of the different blocks right so that you know which blocks have more acidity, which blocks have more of tannin, which blocks have more of this or that, of fruit or whatever. You have to then harmonize it. And the skill in doing that is quite extraordinary. That's what happens when it comes to the time of the blending. The blending is crucial. And Lucci always delivers on this. The harmony, the velvety smoothness, the integration and the completeness of this wine is really quite outstanding. On the nose again, you're going to get the black currants and the cassis of the Merlot. And then you're going to get the red fruits, the red currants, the cherries, the sour plums of the Sangiovese, the acidity, the tannins. And then you get the secondary flavors. You get elements of the wood and the tobacco. And then you even get tertiary flavors like balsam, chocolate, mocha chocolate, sometimes people say. But it's a wine which has got a multiplicity of complexities and a tremendous length.
I think we should taste the 15 together, because when you taste the 17 and the 15 together, the descriptive words that you are saying, to me, I felt that it's a little bit, it's more evident and it's more developed, it's more pronounced in the 2015.
A very good suggestion, Alice, and it will be, because obviously the older the wine is, the more it starts to integrate even further. That Lucci 2017 is lovely now, but it still is a little, for me, a little too young.
It's a baby.
Yeah, it still is. Still is. It's a beautiful baby, but it's a baby. People often say, when is the best time to open a bottle of Lucci once you've bought it? And really the answer to that is it depends on what you like, because in some countries, and some people prefer younger style of vintages, that tends to be, for example, in America, Americans tend to prefer the more vibrant, aggressive, if you like, more overt style of fruit. And there's nothing wrong in that. That's a valid choice. In Britain, the tradition of Britain is to have much more older style, sometimes too much, I think. And then in other countries, it can be a mixture of the two. So when is the right time to drink it is really up to your palate. For me, for Lucci, I would say I love it between 6 and 10 years. Between 6 and 10. I find that between 6 and 10 years, it achieves an equilibrium which is perfect. But once again, the Lucci will last for 20 years. And we know that because we regularly taste all the way back to 1993. Well, I say regularly, occasionally. We still have our wine library where we have every single vintage. And it's a very useful reference point for all of us. Let's try the 2050.
The mocha flavors that you talk about, the cassis that you talk about, is a lot more pronounced in the 2015.
Oh, this is beautiful. I mean, the 2017 is, for me, still too young. It's still too tight. It's beautiful, but it's still tight. And so you're getting more of the acidity, more of the tannins, and less of the fruit. By the time you get to the 2015, the fruit is beginning to balance much more with the acidity and the tannins, which are still very present. But it's the whole assemblage, the whole harmonization of the wine in the 2015, which is really coming to the fore. This is a wine to savor, to sit and enjoy slowly. This is beautiful. I love this wine. And for me, it's only 25 past 10 in the morning. I mean, goodness me. When I was growing up in Scotland, anybody that drank anything at 25 past 10 in the morning was regarded as an outright sinner by the church.
Think of it as you're having an interaction with the Asia. So in Asia, we're at 6:30, so it's perfect timing to wind down.
Yes.
So, yes.
I'm just going to finish off now by saying, what foods would you enjoy with the Lucci wine? And for me, again, Lucci wine, whereas the Brunello is perfect with the big red meats and the stronger cheeses, Lucci, because it's more soft and more luscious, this is a wine I would enjoy with lighter meats like lamb or duck. Roast duck is a perfect combination. White meats, chicken or turkey, can also go extremely well with this, but certainly lamb, duck, game meat like pheasant or partridge. And if you're a vegetarian, there's nothing finer than a beautiful egg dish with truffle and mushroom, maybe an omelette, a particular omelette with mushroom and truffles. It's lovely with this. But that is our Lucci 2015, a great year, one of the great years of Montoccino, and this wine is just showing so well. You've had more than enough of me now. I've been talking for far too long. I hope it's been interesting, and I'm now going to turn over to Alice, who I think is going to introduce some of you if you have questions that you want to ask. If the questions are very, very difficult, I'm going to ask Alessandro because he's far more intelligent than me. If they're easy, simple questions, I'll be delighted to take them.
I think I've got a really good tasting, and for me, I find that the varietal of Sangiovese, when it's young, when we were decanting and preparing the bottles, it looked to us like, it looks to me, in a very clear, very light, and very delicate. Yeah. So it is almost like a reverse. When it's young, you could see that it's the clarity and the likeness of the flight and the likeness of the wine. But when we have the 2017 Lucente and the 2016 Lucente, and then we've got the Luce 2017 and the Luce 2015, you feel that the flesh builds up over the year. The mid palate, the flesh, it just builds up and it's just weighty. So I haven't really had an old vintage of Luchi. So sometimes you just wonder, like, you know, if you talk about 8 years, you talk about 10 years, because there's 25 years of history for the Luchi. Yeah, so when it ages, what will be the potential and what will be that complexity? Because for James Suckling to be able to give the rating of the wines 100 points, 97 points, obviously he can taste and he can feel the potential of what will fill up over the years. I think that's for me, that's my experience that I gained over today's session.
Very good points, Alice. You are clearly an extremely able and competent taster. You know exactly what you're saying, and your words in descriptive terms are beautiful. They're very appropriate. Thank you. You're absolutely right. Somebody as knowledgeable as James Suckling is able to determine how the wine will develop, although it's never entirely clear because wines sometimes take a little bit of a funny turn, but generally he knows. And I've had the great privilege of tasting all of the vintages of Lucci from the 1993 to the present one, because we had a big tasting of all of the vintages at the time of the 20th anniversary. We're planning on doing the same this year for the 25th, but then that horrible thing called COVID had another idea, so we had to suspend that. But we will do it again, don't worry. But one of the finest vintages from the past, which is still so alive, is the 1999. The 1999, actually also the 98, but the 98, 99, they're beautiful vintages. And the significant thing is how these wines just integrate, how they marry together so like that the different elements, the acidity, alcohol, fruit, tannins, but also the different fruits, they suddenly all start to come together as a whole. And instead of tasting just one or two different denominations, you're tasting a complexity of flavors, and it gets more complex as the years develop. It really does.
That's the wonderful wine story about wines, because you never know. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's an interesting journey to taste the wines when it's young and to be surprised while it develops and while it ages. Yeah.
Yes. I remember some years ago, I was working for a company in Britain that had Taylor's Port, Taylor's and Fonseca Port. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because the 1977 vintage was reckoned to be the finest port vintage of all time, 1977. And all of the great port houses of the UK came together for a tasting, and this would have been in 1994. And we decided to open the 77 of everybody's different ports, Taylor, Fonseca, Wars, Graham's, all these different ports. And all the great wine tasters of the UK were there. Robert Joseph, Serena Sutcliffe, Jancis Robinson, they were all there. And we opened the 77, and our expectations were high. And it was awful. Well, it wasn't awful, but it wasn't anything like we thought it was going to be. And everybody went, oh my goodness, what happened? We thought the 77 was and everybody went away disappointed. They had another tasting of the 77 just 3 or 4 years after that. And then it had revitalized. It had become great again. Sometimes wine dips. Wine is a living organism, and it has peaks and troughs. Even as it ages, it doesn't just go like that or like that. It goes a bit like that. And sometimes you can hit it in a trough and you can think, oh my God, this is awful. But then it can surprise you later on too. That's one of the great joys and the magic of wine.
Totally. And I think for all of us who's in the wine industry, for all of us from makers, producers, distributors to clients, I think this is what we enjoy most. We enjoy most about the friendship. We enjoy most about the story. We enjoy most about the excitement that we get out of every vintage, every wine, and the stories, the experiences that we gain out of all these. So,
yeah.
Well,
you know, one of the great quotes from our viticulturalist, Hermano. Hermano, you haven't seen Hermano's today, you've seen Alessandro. Alessandro puts together the raw materials that Hermano, who's our viticulturalist, produces. And Hermano says at one point in one of our films, the 25th anniversary film, I have never visited a wine region which has been unattractive. Wine is grown in the most beautiful parts of the world. And wine has stories to tell. And because of wine's link with nature, it revives people's spirits. And because, as Robert Mondavi and his wife Margaret used to say, wine is a cultural experience. It's not designed to be a drink which you just drink like a shot in order to get high. It's a sophisticated drink which has been with us since Babylonian times, to enjoy with food and good company and conversation and art and music. And that's what I love about it. Good conversation, good company, good people, beautiful wines. It's an extraordinary cultural development of mankind. And it has been an absolute joy to taste it with all of you here today. And I thank Wine Clique enormously for having put this tasting together. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Emerson. Thank you, Charmaine. It's been a great joy.
And Peter, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. So without further ado, Peter, we welcome you when Mr. COVID decides to leave and the world is open up again. Yeah, we welcome you back in Wine Clique office and to continue the conversations and to continue the friendship that we have. Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you very much, Alessandro.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Emerson. Thank you, Charmaine. And thank you to all of your guests who are present in the ether of the virtual world. It's been a great pleasure, and I look forward enormously to coming back to beautiful and lovely Singapore. Thank you for enjoying our wines with us today. Thank you so much.